Do you want to know where Australia's laws against so-called misinformation are heading? Well, look no further than California, which has recently passed legislation to ban meme videos that it deems to be harmful to democracy, which it seems is a euphemism for harmful to the preferred candidate. This type of censorship seems to be precisely what Anthony Albanese and the ALP intend for Australia, but only worse, because Australia doesn't have the First Amendment to protect free speech. And this is not hyperbole. Gavin Newsom specifically signed a bill to combat this so-called deepfake election content, stating that it was, quote, safeguarding the integrity of elections, and it's essential to democracy. And it's critical that we ensure AI is not deployed to undermine the public's trust through disinformation. Now, at a surface level, one can understand this. You don't want people being mimicked and imitated by AI in a manner that deceives people. However, this is actually being deployed to attack clear parody, to attack memes, to attack protected free speech. We're not talking deceptive content, we are talking parody videos. And the problem is the bill appears to be directly aimed at parody videos, and we know this because Gavin Newsom specifically called out a parody video that Elon Musk was spreading. A video that was specifically marked parody in the tweets that were spreading it, and was obvious as parody even without that specific marking. It was a clear direct response to a parody video that was calling out Kamala Harris and her policies. Let's take a listen to the video.
I, Kamala Harris, am your Democrat candidate for president because Joe Biden finally exposed his senility of the debate. Thanks, Joe. I was selected because I am the ultimate diversity hire. I'm both a woman and a person of color. So if you criticize anything I say, you're both sexist and racist. I may not know the first thing about running the country, but remember, that's a good thing if you're a deep state puppet. I had 4 years under the tutelage of the ultimate deep state puppet, a wonderful mentor, Joe Biden. Joe taught me rule number 1, carefully hide your total incompetence. I take insignificant things and I discuss them as if they're significant. And I believe that exploring the significance of the insignificant is in itself significant.
Talking about the significance of the passage of time, right? The significance of the passage of time. So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time, and there is such great significance to the passage of time.
Another trick is trying to sound black. I pretend to celebrate Kwanzaa, and in my speeches, I always do my best Barack Obama impression.
So hear me when I say, I know Donald Trump's type.
And okay, look, maybe my work addressing the root causes of the border crisis were catastrophic, but my knowledge of international politics is truly shocking.
The United States shares a very important relationship, which is an alliance with the Republic of North Korea. It is an alliance that is strong and enduring.
And just remember, when voting this November, it is important to see what can be, unburdened by what has been. And by what has been, I mean Joe Biden. You think the country went to over the past 4 years? You ain't seen nothing yet.
Now, to my mind, this video was clearly parody, and one also wonders whether the video was in fact more truthful than some of the things coming out of the Democrat campaign. But regardless, it is obvious it is a parody video. Now, of course, I understand why clearly manipulated videos that clearly are deceptive might be a cause for concern. But this is a clear parody video, and parody and memes appear to be under attack. It is a literal war on memes. It's not hyperbolic anymore. Babylon Bee, of course, responded in the best way possible by reposting a parody video of Gavin Newsom, which ironically to my mind was actually rather factual, although is clearly a parody video given the voiceover. Here's what the parody video says.
Hi, I'm Gavin Newsom, the governor of California. This is a message for the people of America, given in my authentically recorded, non-AI voice. Thanks to my leadership over the last several years, California has become a world leader in extremist, left-wing governance. My policies were so effective that almost 1 million people are now fleeing the state every year. We even ran out of U-Hauls. During the COVID pandemic, I locked everyone in their homes and shut down businesses for months. Not the French Laundry, though. That's my favorite restaurant. Last year, I cleaned up the dangerous, messy streets of San Francisco, because Chinese Communist President Xi was coming, and I really wanted to impress him. He's my boss, after all. This year, I signed legislation that allows me to take custody of your kid if you refuse to give him artificial hormones and chop off his genitals. Because if you don't do that, you're a bigot, and bigots shouldn't be allowed to have kids. I've also led the way in green energy by banning all cars that don't run on electricity. Then I banned almost all the electricity. This is smart leadership. On my watch, the cost of living and homelessness have skyrocketed. Schools are failing. Drug dealers and human traffickers are pouring across the border. And poop has covered the sidewalks of San Francisco. This is the positive, joyful vision we offer as Democrats. That's why I'm enthusiastically endorsing Kamala Harris for president in 2024. She'll do to the country everything I did in California. Anyway, I'm California Governor Gavin Newsom, and I approve this 100% real message, which is a recording of my voice without the assistance of any AI whatsoever. This isn't a deep fake, and you can rest assured that it isn't, because I just signed an unconstitutional law outlawing deep fakes. No one would dare violate it. Thank you, and science bless America.
Clearly, Gavin Newsom is trying to stop people from mocking the Harris and the Newsom campaigns. Australia, unfortunately, appears to be heading down the exact same road as California. We know this because the government has introduced censorship legislation into Parliament. The government is trying to ban so-called misinformation and disinformation. I say so-called because the word misinformation has just become a weasel word, a word that seems to just encompass information and content that the government of the day doesn't like. But in Australia, it's worse than in the US, because we don't have the First Amendment. California's legislation is very likely to be unconstitutional, at least in part, and is going to be nigh unenforceable against parody videos. But Australia doesn't have comparative protection. We have an implied freedom of political speech in the Constitution, but it is only implied and is not specifically enunciated. Australia's specific legislation would deputise social media companies with policing so-called misinformation and disinformation. What is misinformation and disinformation, you might ask? Well, amongst other things, it can include content that is supposedly harmful to the democratic process. What exactly is harmful to the democratic process, you might ask? Well, the answer is, it's vague. It isn't clearly defined in the legislation, and it's going to be something that social media companies would need to interpret by themselves. No one might think that parody videos, in fact, cannot be harmful, and they are intrinsic to democracy. Indeed, a robust back and forth might be exactly how you would think democracy should function. But when social media companies are under attack from politicians and from sections of the loudmouth mainstream media, how do you think those social media companies are going to respond? Do you think they're going to stand up for parody and memes and free speech? Or do you think they will take the easy path and just cave? To my mind, the answer is obvious and has already been demonstrated. They will just cave. The government knows this. The government knows when it points its finger and says, "Oh, that is misinformation," the social media companies would just take the path of least resistance and just go along with it. They won't go and protect their users. They'll just go along with whatever the government is telling them to do because that is easier. The government knows this, and the government knows that the process of dealing with it when it clamps down on social media companies is so painful they just don't want to exert the effort. Furthermore, the government knows the bureaucracy is overwhelmingly left-leaning, even when a conservative government comes to power. This means that the ALP, who are trying to progress this bill, know perfectly well that the so-called war on misinformation is just going to be an attack on more conservative parties, and they know full well how this is going to be policed. The bureaucrats will clearly just maintain ALP and Greens talking points and seek to suppress conservative voters. Seek to suppress them either if it's general news reporting or if it is parody and meme videos. California shows us exactly where this bill is headed. California shows us exactly what Anthony Albanese and the ALP intend for this legislation. California shows us exactly how this is going to be deployed and exactly why it is going to be deployed, and is going to be deployed in order to try to score political points by suppressing criticism, suppressing memes, and suppressing parody. It is clear where this legislation is headed. It is appalling that the legislation was introduced into Parliament despite all of the negative feedback that the regulator published on its own website. Anthony Albanese and the ALP should be ashamed of themselves for pursuing this. Let's hope this bill is defeated, because it is draconian, and it is retrograde, and is a clear attack on free speech. But of course, let me know your thoughts. Maybe you disagree with me, and maybe you think that parody and memes should be banned. Let me know what you think in the comments below.